Hello YouTube! In this video I am comparing the weapon skills damage of UL Outlands. The parameters of this study was a test dummy with no food bonus, no shiv ability bonuses such as Consecrate Weapon or Divine Fury. The build I ran was 100 in said weapon skill, 100 in healing. I did have pressure points maxed out in the Healer's Codex for all the tests, in case you want to replicate my results. 100 tactics, 100 chivalry, 80 anatomy, 80 arms lure with disarm toggled to the on position, 80 parry, and 80 magic resistance. I also ran the test on the dummy for 1 hour intervals to get fair DPS as a whole. And for the purposes of consistency, I did use all either Avar or Avar weapons. And I pulled my weapon choices for each of these off of the UO Outlands website for light grinding because it had all the categories in it. So I figured in Outland's eyes it was a fair comparison of these weapons. I have ranked the stances by least to most damage without codex, aspect, or chain bonuses. The results were as follows. Archery in dead last with 23.46 DPS. Wrestling was next with 27.97 DPS. Swordsmanship, dead in the middle, was 30.35 DPS. Then fencing with just barely more, 30.42 DPS. It came in second. And, to no surprise, Mace fighting came in first with 31.65 DPS. Now, the gap isn't that big here in these. Swordsmanship, fencing, and mace fighting are within 1.5 to 2 points. But this irked me a little. I have been saying that swordsmanship is the best weapon skill for years, so I deepened my experience to the codexes. Could my beloved swordsmanship do more damage if codexes damage was included? So, after way too many hours of AFKing, hitting this poor guy, I can rank the codex damage as well. In dead last was wrestling, with crab stance being last place overall, 27.49 DPS. Then single target wise is spider with 28.1 DPS. Then comes Crane with a 29.08 DPS, but it also heals you. Then in second for the wrestling category is Dragon Stance with 30.28 DPS, which, if you had any Zen Strike procs, would be higher, but I didn't want to skew any of the results with weapon specials. I just wanted to do purely their baselines. And in first for wrestling is Monkey with a DPS of 31.33. And of course that'll go up with accuracy. But second in the weapon skill category with Codex is Archery, with Incendiary being last at 23.53 DPS. Then Fouling with 24.43 DPS. Then Maiming with 26.69 DPS. Then in archery, second is long shot with a DPS of 26.86. And I know what you're thinking, that all those were lower than the wrestling equivalents. And you'd be right. The one that bumps archery over wrestling is arcane. And that's because it has a staggering 34.77 DPS, beating wrestling by over 3 damage per second. Then, in the middle, third place is fencing, with a last place of single target DPS being cleave with 29.9 DPS. Then comes defensive with a 30.17 DPS. Then we get some higher numbers with aggressive being a 37.04 DPS. And then comes Fang with a DPS of 39.3. And on that one, all you have to do is have the weapon poisoned. You never actually have to apply it. So I ran the test with lethal poison on my weapon, so I could never apply it, but I could get the benefits to see how Fang did as a weapon. But fencing's top DPS is Blackguard, which surprised me with a whopping 42.49 DPS. Now, to the shock of everyone, in second place is Mace fighting, with single target cleave being the worst in this one's category with a 32.76. Next, due to accuracy issues, is Wild Swing at 33.24 DPS. But with higher aspect accuracy or mastery chain accuracy, that number will go up. Then right in the middle is defensive with a 33.32 DPS. Second place for the Mace fighting is aggressive with a DPS of 38.54. And in first, Sunder with an armor shattering, yeah, see what I did there, DPS of 42.89. And in first, for Codex damage, my favorite weapon skill, Sword Mastery, with the worst being single target cleave at 28.95 DPS. Next was defensive with 29.64 DPS. Surprisingly to me, Flaying ended up right in the middle with a DPS of 34.45. Coming in second was Warrior with a 39.88 DPS. And beating Mace fighting by a margin of over 4 damage per second is aggressive, with the highest DPS being 47.42. Thus Swords claims the top spot. And I stopped looking because I finally found how Swords can be top spot. However, I have to mention this. If all possible targets could be hit by the multi-target stances, being Clave, Incendiary, and Spider, the ranks change, with Mace fighting coming out on top with a staggering 51.11 DPS. Then Wrestling sneaks into relevancy with 47.77 DPS. Then Fencing right behind that with 46.64 DPS. Swordsmanship coming in second to last is Swordsmanship with 45.16 DPS. And in last place, with a jaw-dropping 36.71 in this category is archery. But of course, even though archery did very poorly in a lot of categories, it is still the safest due to the elongation you can have from your target. You don't have to be right next to him with archery. But it does do the lowest damage in these studies. At least in this category. And in flat damage. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. I do stream normally on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays from 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, roundabouts. Sometimes I'm a little late, sometimes my beautiful wife gets home early, so I don't always get the full 4 hours, but I try. Anyways, thank you so much for tuning in. Drop a like below if you liked the video. Comment anything else you'd like to see, or if you'd like me to do further analysis into the weapon skills. And sub if you like this content. Thank y'all for tuning in, and as always, have a great rest of your day.